The courtroom hummed with the quiet tension that only a family safety hearing could carry. The wooden benches creaked under the weight of anxious relatives and strangers alike, each person bracing for words that could alter lives forever. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long lines across the polished floor, illuminating the sharp edges of law books stacked neatly on the judge's bench. Deputy Mark Hale, in full uniform, stood at the back of the room with his K-9 partner, Chase, a German shepherd renowned in the department for his keen instincts and unwavering loyalty. Hale's eyes scanned the room while his mind wandered over the protocols. Custody hearings could be messy, emotional, and unpredictable, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. At 3 years old, Lily was a tiny bundle of nerves and bravery, too young to fully comprehend the legal stakes, but old enough to carry memories no child should ever have. She sat on her aunt's lap, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit that smelled faintly of lavender and home. Her wide brown eyes darted nervously from the judge's gavel to the rows of officers stationed strategically throughout the room. Everyone in the courtroom assumed she was just another scared child, likely to cling tightly and remain quiet. They were wrong. Without warning, Lily twisted free from her aunt's gentle grasp. Her tiny legs carried her forward, the soles of her shoes barely making a sound against the polished courtroom floor. Every head turned instantly. Gasps rippled through the room as people whispered in shock. Judges, attorneys, and court officers froze, unsure if they should intervene. Even Deputy Hale took a step forward, instinctively alert, his hand hovering near Chase's collar, ready to restrain the child if needed. But Lily did not stop. Her focus was singular, unwavering. She moved directly toward Chase, her small hand outstretched, clutching the stuffed rabbit. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and determination, locked onto the German shepherd's trained gaze. She had been here before in her memory in the moments she had tried to scream but could not. Something about Chase, his steady posture, his calm energy, made her feel safe. He was her anchor in a world that had been dark and unpredictable. Whispers filled the room. "Is she going to?" someone muttered under their breath. A bailiff raised a hand, signaling for calm, but no one moved. Judges rarely allowed children to roam freely, especially not in a high-stakes courtroom with strangers, lawyers, and potential threats. Yet Lily walked forward, every step deliberate. Her aunt tried to call her back, her voice trembling with panic. "Lily, come here. Don't." But Lily shook her head fiercely, refusing to be restrained. She knew she needed to reach Chase, to tell him something that could not be shared with the adults. Deputy Hale instinctively knelt, bringing himself closer to the girl while maintaining a safe distance. He whispered soothingly, "Hey, little one, it's okay, come here slowly." But Lily did not approach him. She ignored the officers, the gavel, the judge, and even her own aunt. She walked straight to Chase, who remained perfectly still, sensing her fear but also her purpose. The K-9's ears twitched as he detected her heartbeat, rapid but steady, her fear mingled with courage. He had trained for high-stress situations, but never for this. A child walking toward him in a courtroom, not out of fear, but with a secret to share. When Lily finally reached Chase, she stopped, just inches from the dog's snout. Her trembling fingers reached up to touch his vest, the leather cool beneath her hand. She leaned close and whispered something so soft that no one else could hear it. Chase's ears flicked, his posture shifting ever so slightly. He stepped back, then forward again, his gaze scanning the room with precision. Deputy Hale felt a chill run down his spine. Chase never reacted this way to anyone. Something was happening, something significant. The courtroom fell utterly silent. The judge leaned forward in her chair, her gavel momentarily forgotten. Lawyers froze mid-note, stenographers paused their typing, and even the public spectators held their breath. Lily whispered again, barely audible, yet each word seemed to reverberate through the room. Chase responded immediately, tilting his head, his body stiffening, growling softly but controlled. Everyone watched, unable to comprehend what was occurring. A trained K-9's reaction was always telling, but nothing had ever prepared anyone for a toddler commanding such focus from a professional police dog. Her aunt finally reached her, tears in her eyes. "Lily, come back," she pleaded. But Lily shook her head, her gaze locked on Chase. She whispered once more, her voice quivering, "He's here." The judge's eyes widened and Deputy Hale's heart skipped a beat. Every officer in the room exchanged a glance that said silently, "This isn't just a game." Lily had just identified a person, someone significant, and her K-9 partner had recognized the threat before any adult could process it. The room seemed to constrict around them, the air thick with tension and disbelief. Witnesses murmured quietly, trying to rationalize the moment. Could a child really remember enough? Could a dog truly understand what she meant? Deputy Hale knelt closer to Lily, speaking gently. "Sweetheart, what did you tell Chase?" he asked softly. Lily's lips moved again, and the words, so tiny and innocent yet full of weight, hung in the air. "He's here," she repeated. Chase's body stiffened further, eyes zeroed in on a man seated behind the defense table, Eric Dalton, Lily's mother's boyfriend. He looked ordinary enough, calm in his suit, trying to mask whatever he was feeling. But Chase didn't need to see fear, he could sense it. His growl, low and measured, vibrated through the room, sending a warning everyone felt but could not yet interpret. The judge, usually composed and unwavering, called for order, her voice steady but tinged with shock. "All right." Everyone remained calm. Deputies immediately moved toward the suspect, but Chase remained between Lily and Eric, unwavering. Lily's tiny hand rested on Chase's vest, her finger pointing at the man. She spoke again, quieter this time, her voice firm despite the trembling. "He took me," she whispered. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Spectators gasped. Lawyers shuffled papers, unsure whether this was admissible or irrelevant. But Deputy Hale understood instantly. This child had just revealed the presence of a dangerous adult, someone tied to her past trauma. Chase, obedient yet protective, would not move. The courtroom had become a stage for a scene no one had rehearsed, yet every detail was playing out with precision. A child's courage, a dog's instinct, and a man's hidden guilt finally confronting truth. The bailiff signaled for deputies to proceed carefully. Hale maintained his position beside Lily, hand resting lightly on her back, offering comfort and safety. Chase stayed alert, ears forward, eyes locked, growling softly, controlled. Every step of the investigation, every movement of the suspect, was now dictated by the child and the dog. Judge Reynolds, a veteran of countless courtroom dramas, felt the weight of the moment. She had seen testimony unravel lives, but she had never witnessed justice arrive with such purity. A child's voice, a dog's instinct, and a room full of stunned adults. Lily's aunt finally sank to the floor, overwhelmed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry," she whispered to her niece, but Lily, with innocence and resolve, shook her head. "It's okay, Chase understands." Deputy Hale knelt and whispered, "Yes, he does, and so do I. You're safe now." The judge's gavel hovered above the desk, yet she did not strike it. No words were needed. The courtroom was witnessing something extraordinary. Truth delivered not through argument or evidence, but through courage, instinct, and connection. As officers prepared to secure the suspect, Lily clutched her rabbit tightly and leaned against Chase, who lowered his head, allowing her comfort while still maintaining vigilance. The courtroom remained silent, stunned, the air still trembling with the weight of the revelation. Everyone had realized a profound truth in that moment. Sometimes, the smallest voices hold the greatest power. The tiniest hands, the softest whispers, and the loyal instincts of a dog can uncover what decades of investigation might never reveal. And as Lily stood there, 3 years old, tiny yet brave, the room understood. Nothing in that courtroom would ever be the same. The courtroom still hummed with shock from the moment Lily whispered to Chase. Even as deputies edged toward the suspect, the room felt suspended in time, as if everyone were holding their breath. The polished floors reflected the tension like a mirror, and sunlight streaming through the tall windows seemed unusually bright, illuminating the small figure of the toddler and the steadfast German shepherd. Nobody could look away. Every eye followed Lily, who remained frozen beside Chase, her small hand clutching his vest, trembling yet unwavering. Deputy Mark Hale knelt beside her, voice low and calm. "Sweetheart, what did you just tell Chase?" Lily tilted her head, her wide brown eyes locking with Hale's. "He's here," she whispered again, a barely audible voice that carried the weight of memory, fear, and truth. Hale felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't just a child speaking. This was a child identifying someone dangerous, someone who had hurt her, and someone who could still pose a threat. Chase responded immediately. His body tensed, his gaze fixed, ears erect. The low, controlled growl he emitted was not just a warning. It was a signal to the deputies and the judge that danger was present. Every trained officer understood the significance. Chase didn't react without reason, and his focus on Eric Dalton, the man sitting calmly behind the defense table, was more than instinct. It was recognition. The K-9's trained intuition had zeroed in on a person linked to the child's trauma. Whispers filled the courtroom. Spectators leaned forward, some whispering questions to their neighbors. "What did she say?" one murmured. "Who? Here?" another asked, eyes wide with disbelief. Judge Reynolds, usually composed and commanding, was now visibly leaning forward, her eyes scanning the room as she tried to make sense of what was unfolding. She had presided over hundreds of cases, yet nothing could have prepared her for a toddler's words halting a courtroom mid-proceeding. Bailiff raised a hand, calling for order, but silence reigned. Lawyers paused mid-note-taking. Stenographers stopped their fingers, and everyone in attendance realized that this was no ordinary custody hearing. This was a moment that would be remembered for years. Deputy Hale whispered to himself, "Stay calm, protect her, and let the dog do his job." Chase stayed at Lily's side, unwavering, his eyes locked on Eric Dalton, scanning for subtle movements, reading intentions invisible to most human eyes. Lily leaned against Chase, the weight of her tiny body almost a shield for the man she identified. "He took me," she whispered again, and this time her voice was firmer. She repeated details she had never spoken aloud. The sound of the car engine, the smell of the jacket the man had worn, even a scar on his arm. Every word she spoke was clear, deliberate, and unmistakable. Her memory, once buried in fear, was now breaking through because she felt safe beside Chase. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Her aunt, sitting on the bench, finally found her voice. "Lily, no, sit down, don't talk," she cried, fear and guilt warring across her face. But Lily shook her head and pointed at Chase's vest. "He understands," she said. "He knows I have to tell him." Deputy Hale's chest tightened. He had seen children respond to K-9 partners before, but never like this. Lily's interaction wasn't playful or frightened. It was strategic and instinctive. She knew Chase would understand what she could not tell anyone else. Judge Reynolds banged her gavel lightly, trying to regain control, but her voice softened as she addressed the room. "Everyone, remain calm. Let the child speak if she feels safe. Deputy Hale, please ensure her safety." Hale nodded, crouching slightly, positioning himself so he could intervene if necessary, but allowing Lily the space she clearly needed. Chase remained calm yet alert, his body a perfect balance of protection and patience. He had been trained for life-or-death situations, but even he was now part of something remarkable. A child revealing critical truths that could determine justice. All eyes shifted back to Eric Dalton. He appeared uncomfortable now, shifting slightly in his seat, beads of sweat forming along his forehead. He tried to force a smile, but it faltered as Chase's gaze never wavered. He attempted to speak, but his voice trembled. I'm not," he stammered. His words were drowned out by the quiet intensity radiating from Lily and Chase. The courtroom understood what the officers already knew. The dog's instincts were rarely wrong. And right now, Chase was signaling a threat. Lily's aunt finally sank into her chair, silent tears tracing her cheeks. She had always tried to protect her niece, but now, seeing her bravery, she felt both pride and fear. She whispered under her breath, "Please be okay, baby girl." Meanwhile, Deputy Hale watched every nuance. The child's body language, the dog's stance, the suspect's reactions. It was a dance of subtle signals that most adults would have missed, but every trained officer understood. And one thing was crystal clear. Something about this man did not sit right, and Lily had sensed it long before anyone else. The judge leaned closer to the bench, whispering to her clerk, Is the K-9 responding to a real threat or? The clerk shook her head, equally bewildered. Judge Reynolds realized she was witnessing something extraordinary, the combination of a child's memory, trauma, and instinctive trust in an animal's intuition. Rarely did she see justice present itself in such a raw, immediate form. She raised her gavel slightly, calling for order again, but she knew this moment required patience, not force. Chase suddenly moved forward a few steps, positioning himself between Lily and Eric Dalton. The movement was deliberate, controlled, yet unmistakably protective. The low growl deepened. Even the spectators could sense the warning in the sound. Eric's calm demeanor faltered, and he instinctively leaned back, his hand twitching toward the lawyer's table as if seeking refuge. But there was no escape from the truth, no hiding from a child's memory or a dog's perception. The court had become a stage for something far larger than procedural law. It had become a crucible of courage, instinct, and revelation. Lily straightened, tiny shoulders squared, her voice gaining confidence. "He said he'd hurt me if I told anyone," she said, the words breaking the silence like glass. "But Chase knows, and I need him to hear me." Deputy Hale felt a lump in his throat. Even he understood the gravity of a toddler explaining trauma in front of dozens of adults, with a dog acting as interpreter and protector. It was surreal and chilling, yet undeniably true. The bailiff stepped closer to ensure the courtroom remained under control, but the officers holding the perimeter understood their roles had changed. They were no longer simply maintaining order. They were witnesses to justice unfolding organically, guided by a child and her K-9 partner. Spectators leaned forward, captivated. The media photographers present for coverage held their cameras at the ready, though even their professional detachment faltered as they absorbed the extraordinary scene. Eric Dalton's breathing became shallow. His attempts at maintaining composure failed. I didn't take her," he muttered weakly. Chase's eyes never left him, muscles tense, growling softly but steadily, a perfect balance of discipline and warning. Lily's tiny hand pressed lightly on Chase's vest, her fingers trembling but purposeful. She was safe. She knew she was protected, and yet she kept talking, recounting memories adults had dismissed as too small or too insignificant to matter. Finally, Judge Reynolds addressed the courtroom, voice steady but imbued with awe. "This hearing has taken an unexpected turn. I will allow the child to remain with Deputy Hale and the K-9 while officers determine the veracity of her statements. No one is to intervene unless her safety is compromised." The gavel hovered above the desk, striking in rhythm with the rapid beating of everyone's heart. This courtroom, like so many others, had rules, but sometimes the law had to bend to extraordinary circumstances. Lily's aunt finally approached, kneeling beside her, whispering softly. "Lily, are you sure about this?" Lily nodded firmly. "Chase understands. He won't let anyone hurt me." Deputy Hale watched silently, marveling at the trust between child and dog. Chase's ears flicked toward Lily and he nuzzled her hand, reassuring her, signaling that she was safe. The moment was delicate yet powerful. Justice, instinct, and courage converged, forming a scene no one in that courtroom would ever forget. As the officers prepared to move Eric Dalton into custody for questioning, Lily stayed close to Chase, holding his vest as though it were a lifeline. Every eye in the room followed them. Spectators whispered in awe, reporters scribbled furiously. Even the judge allowed a rare, silent acknowledgement. This child's bravery and a dog's unwavering loyalty had shifted the course of events. It was the first act in a drama that promised truth, justice, and revelation. And in that courtroom, everyone realized one undeniable truth. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the heaviest weight, and sometimes a dog's instincts are the most trustworthy form of witness. The courtroom remained frozen in stunned silence after Lily's whispered words to Chase. For a few moments, it was as if the world had paused, caught in the fragile space between fear and revelation. Deputy Mark Hale adjusted his stance, keeping one eye on Lily and the other on Chase, who remained alert, every muscle in his body coiled yet controlled. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, breath caught in collective suspense. Even Judge Reynolds, seasoned and unflappable, could not hide the flicker of astonishment in her eyes. Nothing in her long career had prepared her for a toddler identifying a threat with the clarity of a seasoned witness. Lily, small and trembling, held tightly onto Chase's vest. Her wide brown eyes scanned the room, taking in the faces of adults she had once feared. The memory of that night was etched deeply into her mind. The day she had been taken from her home, the dark hallway, the muffled whispers, and the threats that had silenced her voice. At 3, most children would have forgotten or suppressed such trauma, but Lily's recollection was vivid, raw, and terrifyingly precise. And now, with Chase at her side, she felt safe enough to speak. "Chase, he looks like the dog that found me," Lily said softly, her voice quivering but firm. Every word carried weight beyond her years. Deputy Hale's chest tightened as he absorbed her statement. The implication was staggering. Lily had been rescued before, yet no one had pieced together the truth until now. Chase, trained for search and rescue operations, had previously been involved in the mission that saved her. His presence in the courtroom wasn't incidental, it was providential. The dog's instincts aligned with Lily's memory, creating a bridge between her fear and the adult's understanding. Lily's aunt froze in disbelief. Her hands trembled, gripping the edge of her seat. She whispered under her breath, I didn't know she remembered." Guilt and horror painted her face. She had tried to protect Lily, shield her from the past, but now the truth was surfacing in the most dramatic way imaginable. Every detail Lily shared, details she had never spoken aloud, was precise. From the texture of the car seat to the faint perfume the kidnapper had worn, her recollection was terrifyingly accurate. Deputy Hale knelt, speaking gently. "Sweetheart, can you tell me what you remember?" Lily's gaze remained locked on Chase, her tiny fingers brushing the dog's fur. "The bad man, he said he'd hurt me if I told anyone," she whispered, voice barely audible but charged with urgency. "But I knew Chase would understand. He wouldn't let him hurt me." Hale felt a chill run down his spine. The child's fear, bravery, and trust in the dog formed an unspoken alliance. This was not just testimony. It was survival manifesting in the most extraordinary way. The judge's voice, calm but heavy with emotion, cut through the tension. "Deputy Hale, please ensure the child's safety. Let her speak. The court will listen." Spectators leaned forward. Lawyers adjusted their notes, trying to maintain composure. Even the media present, trained to remain impartial, found themselves captivated. This was no ordinary hearing. The child's memory, coupled with the K-9's reaction, created a narrative that was impossible to ignore. Every word Lily spoke was a clue, a key, a lifeline to truth. Lily continued, her voice steadier now. She described the events of the night she had been taken. "He came into my room. I was asleep. He wore a jacket that smelled like smoke and leather," she said. Her small fingers traced the edge of Chase's vest as if drawing strength from him. "He said no one would believe me. He said I'd be alone if I told." Each phrase was measured, deliberate, and terrifyingly precise. Deputy Hale listened intently, taking mental notes even as his heart raced. He had heard many child accounts over his career, but few had the clarity, detail, and instinctive trust that Lily exhibited. Chase shifted slightly, his head tilting, ears forward, eyes never leaving the figure of Eric Dalton, seated a few feet away. Eric's face drained of color as he realized the child's words were not idle imagination. Her description matched details of the case he had thought buried and untraceable. The courtroom seemed to shrink around them as Lily's testimony, simple in words but monumental in implication, began to unravel the carefully constructed veil Dalton had maintained. Every observer understood the significance. The K-9's reaction corroborated the child's memory, lending it credibility beyond any doubt. The tension in the room was palpable. Spectators whispered to one another, some covering their mouths in shock. "She remembers everything," one murmured. How can she remember that at 3 years old?" The question hung in the air. Deputy Hale's jaw tightened. He knew the answer. Trauma imprints differently on the human mind, and when coupled with trust in a protective figure like Chase, memories long suppressed could resurface in clarity. This child was a living testament to both the horrors she endured and the resilience she possessed. Judge Reynolds, composed yet visibly shaken, addressed the courtroom. We must ensure that the child's testimony is recorded accurately. Deputy Hale, please remain with her. Officers, be prepared for any necessary action." Her voice carried authority but also empathy. She understood the extraordinary nature of what was unfolding. This wasn't merely a legal proceeding anymore. It was a moment of truth, courage, and revelation. Every adult in the room sensed it. A tiny child and a loyal K9 had become the center of a justice mechanism far more profound than anyone had anticipated. Lily's aunt finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Lily, I didn't know you remembered. You're so brave." Lily shook her head slightly. "I had to tell someone. I wanted Chase to know first. He understands." Deputy Hale felt a lump in his throat. He had seen trust between a child and a K9 before, but never with such precision, bravery, and unspoken strategy. Lily's interaction with Chase wasn't just instinctive, it was necessary for her survival. And the courtroom, whether it wanted to admit it or not, was now part of her story. The media photographers snapped pictures, but even their lenses could not capture the raw tension, fear, and courage emanating from the child and dog. Every click, every flash highlighted the delicate dance between past trauma and present revelation. Lily's voice continued, detailing the events, the car she was placed in, the muffled threats, the sound of a television left on to mask movement. Every detail was precise, corroborating evidence that had eluded investigators for weeks. Deputy Hale took mental notes, ready to ensure her account was preserved. Eric Dalton's composure faltered. His hand trembled and he leaned slightly forward in his chair. He whispered to his lawyer, "She's remembering, but that's impossible." His lawyer placed a hand on his arm, signaling restraint, but Chase, ever vigilant, growled low, warning. Dalton's eyes flicked nervously toward the K9. The child's small hand pressed against the dog's vest again. "He can't lie," Lily whispered softly, her eyes locked on Chase. "I told him everything." The courtroom collectively shivered at the implications. Deputy Hale spoke gently to Lily. "Can you show me what you mean?" Lily nodded, pointing at Dalton. "That's him. He took me." Chase's stance stiffened, signaling recognition. The judges, officers, and spectators understood immediately. This was no mere coincidence. The alignment of memory, instinct, and behavior was undeniable. The courtroom buzzed with silent realization. The child's voice, bolstered by a K9's instincts, was revealing the truth in a way no adult testimony could replicate. Judge Reynolds banged her gavel lightly, calling for order. "Deputies, please approach the suspect carefully. Ensure the child's safety." Her tone was firm yet tinged with awe. This courtroom had never experienced anything like this. A toddler's memories unlocking evidence, a trained dog signaling threat, and a suspect's carefully constructed facade unraveling in real time. Every officer, every lawyer, every spectator understood the magnitude of the moment. The future of the case now rested on the courage of a small child and the instincts of a loyal K9. Lily stayed beside Chase, whispering more details about that night. The clothes she had been wearing, the blanket that smelled faintly of detergent and fear, the warnings that had silenced her voice until now. Her recollection was precise, detailed, and terrifying. Deputy Hale marveled at her ability to articulate memories suppressed by trauma. "You're safe now," he whispered, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Chase nudged her gently, a silent message of affirmation. For the first time, the child felt truly safe. Spectators leaned forward, absorbing every word. Media cameras captured the moment, yet none could convey the raw intensity. A child's courage, a K9's protective instincts, and the unfolding exposure of a man's guilt. Eric Dalton's color drained further. He leaned back in his chair, eyes darting between the child, the dog, and the judge. He understood the peril he now faced. The courtroom was no longer simply a place of legal procedure. It was a crucible of truth, bravery, and revelation. Lily, her small hand still resting on Chase, whispered once more. "He said no one would believe me, but I told Chase and he listens." The courtroom was silent. The weight of her words hung in the air, undeniable and profound. Deputy Hale exhaled slowly, realizing that this small child with a loyal dog at her side had changed everything. The stage was set for justice, for confrontation, and for the truth to finally emerge. And in that quiet yet charged moment, everyone understood. Nothing would ever be the same again. The courtroom remained tense, every heartbeat audible as if amplified by the polished wood floors. Lily stayed beside Chase, small hand gripping the vest of the German shepherd with quiet determination. Her wide brown eyes, filled with both fear and courage, were locked on a figure across the room, Eric Dalton, her mother's boyfriend. For weeks, investigators had overlooked Dalton as a potential suspect, focusing on other leads, other possibilities. But Chase's instincts, combined with Lily's memory, left no doubt. Dalton was the threat lurking in plain sight, and everyone in the room felt the tension swell like a storm about to break. Deputy Mark Hale adjusted his stance beside Lily, ensuring she remained calm while keeping his hand near Chase's collar. The K-9, perfectly trained for life-or-death situations, had locked onto Dalton. Every muscle in Chase's body was taut, eyes never leaving the man. Hale's mind raced. He had seen K-9s react before, but never with this intensity in a courtroom setting. There were no distractions, no noise, just the child, the dog, and the suspect, caught in a silent, powerful confrontation that seemed larger than life. Lily's tiny hand pressed harder against Chase's vest, as if conveying her trust and seeking reassurance. "He hurt me," she whispered softly, barely audible. The room held its breath. Dalton shifted uneasily in his chair, trying to hide the subtle tremor in his hands. He leaned slightly toward his attorney, whispering, I don't know what she's talking about." But Chase was undeterred. The K-9's growl deepened, a low, resonant warning that vibrated through the courtroom, signaling danger to every trained officer present. Spectators gasped. Some rose slightly from their seats, unsure if they should intervene or stay still. Judge Reynolds, seated behind the bench, raised a hand, her gavel suspended midair. "Everyone remain calm," she commanded, her voice steady despite the unusual tension in the room. The officers on perimeter shifted slightly, ready to respond, but also mindful that this was no ordinary confrontation. This was a child's identification, backed by the unshakable instincts of a police K-9, and it demanded careful attention. Chase moved closer to Dalton, head low, eyes locked. The growl, controlled yet unmistakable, intensified. Dalton's composure faltered. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead and his hands fidgeted nervously. The courtroom could feel his panic radiating outward. Every adult present understood the unspoken message. The dog was signaling that Dalton posed a real, present danger. The K-9's behavior, combined with Lily's testimony, left no room for doubt. The child had identified her abuser, and the dog had confirmed the threat through instinctual behavior that humans could not fake or manipulate. Deputy Hale remained close, whispering reassurance to Lily. "It's okay, sweetheart, you're safe, Chase is with you." Lily's small nod conveyed understanding and trust. She pointed at Dalton. "That's him," she whispered. "He took me. He said I couldn't tell anyone." Her voice, though soft, resonated with clarity and finality. The courtroom was silent, save for the low growl of Chase and the collective gasp of those witnessing the scene unfold. For the first time, the full weight of her memory, coupled with the K-9's perception, settled into the minds of every observer. Dalton shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his lawyer, who quickly motioned for him to remain seated and quiet. But it was too late. The evidence of his panic, combined with Lily's precise recollections, left him exposed. Chase, sensing every micro-movement, adjusted his stance, keeping Dalton within his line of sight while maintaining a protective position near Lily. Every eye in the courtroom followed the dog's movements. The atmosphere was electric, the tension palpable, as if the entire room were collectively holding its breath, waiting for the next action to unfold. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, her gavel poised but untouched. "Deputies," she said, voice steady yet tinged with awe, "approach carefully. Ensure the child's safety while addressing the suspect." Hale nodded, signaling the officers to proceed with caution. They moved as a coordinated unit, aware that any sudden movement could escalate the situation. Chase remained vigilant, a living barrier between Dalton and the child. The K-9's growl softened slightly, a controlled warning, but his eyes never wavered from the suspect. Every subtle movement conveyed instinct, training, and a clear message. Danger had been identified and protection was active. Lily remained calm beside Chase, her trust absolute. She spoke again, detailing aspects of her abduction. The jacket Dalton had worn, its peculiar smell of smoke and leather, the muffled voice, the car they had driven in. Every detail she revealed seemed to pierce the courtroom air, making Dalton's attempts at composure increasingly futile. Hale noted every word, understanding that these recollections, corroborated by the dog's behavior, were more than testimony. They were irrefutable evidence of Dalton's guilt. The spectators murmured quietly, astonishment etched on their faces. "She remembers everything," one whispered. "How can a 3-year-old remember that much?" another added. "And the dog knows too." Deputy Hale, crouched beside Lily, understood. Trauma could imprint memory in extraordinary ways. Add to that the instinctive connection between child and K-9, and what was happening before them was a rare intersection of courage, survival, and intuition. Lily had survived. Chase understood. And Dalton's guilt was being revealed in real time. Dalton's attempts to speak grew frantic. I didn't take her," he stammered, voice rising despite his attempts at calm. Chase, unflinching, let out a low growl, a final warning. The K-9's body language communicated what words could not: retreat and face the consequences. Deputy Hale gestured subtly, signaling officers to approach. Every movement was measured, controlled, designed to ensure Lily remained safe while law enforcement addressed the threat. Dalton's fear was now visible to everyone. He realized he was exposed, and the courtroom could see it as clearly as the child and the dog did. Judge Reynolds banged her gavel lightly, calling for order, though the room remained electric with tension. "Deputies, proceed with caution. The suspect is to be detained for questioning. Ensure the child's safety." The officers moved carefully toward Dalton, aware that the slightest misstep could endanger Lily or escalate the situation. Chase stayed alert, moving with calculated precision to keep Dalton contained and protect the child. The courtroom collectively held its breath, every movement under scrutiny. The scene was cinematic in its intensity. A toddler, a dog, a dangerous man exposed, and the law responding with caution and precision. As the deputies reached Dalton, Lily pressed her hand on Chase's vest, whispering softly, "Don't let him touch me." Chase's body stiffened, protective yet obedient. The K-9's instincts had become the child's shield, a living barrier against the danger Dalton represented. Every observer understood the significance. This was no ordinary courtroom moment. It was a rare alignment of memory, instinct, courage, and protection. The child had identified the threat, the dog had corroborated it, and the law was now acting to remove that threat safely. Dalton's panic escalated as officers began to cuff him. "I didn't do anything," he shouted, voice cracking. Chase remained firm, growl low but steady, preventing any sudden movement from Dalton. The child's small voice added gravity to the moment. "He's the one, he took me." Her words, combined with the dog's behavior, left no doubt in the minds of the officers, the judge, or the spectators. Dalton's facade was gone. His attempts at denial were irrelevant. The evidence of fear, memory, and instinct was undeniable. Deputy Hale guided Lily slightly back, ensuring she remained safe as the officers took Dalton toward the courtroom exit. Chase stayed by her side, head low, eyes scanning for additional threats. Lily leaned against him, trembling but relieved. Her tiny voice whispered, "He won't hurt me now." The courtroom exhaled collectively. Spectators, journalists, and officers alike absorbed the extraordinary scene. A toddler's courage, a K-9's instincts, and a man's guilt revealed before their eyes. Justice, raw and immediate, had begun to take form. Judge Reynolds, observing the removal of Dalton, spoke softly but firmly. "This courtroom has witnessed an extraordinary act of courage and truth today. The child's testimony, combined with the dog's instincts, has revealed facts that might otherwise have remained hidden. Deputies, ensure she remains safe. This matter is far from over, but the first steps toward justice are being taken." The gavel remained poised, a reminder that formal proceedings continued even amid this extraordinary unfolding of events. Lily, still holding Chase's vest, whispered softly, "Thank you for listening." Deputy Hale smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. Chase nudged her gently, reassuring her. For the first time in weeks, Lily felt truly safe. The courtroom had transformed from a place of tension to a stage of revelation, courage, and protection. The K-9 had become more than a partner. He was a shield, a witness, and a hero alongside a tiny child who refused to be silenced. And in that moment, everyone present understood. Courage comes in all sizes, and sometimes the truth is revealed through the unlikeliest of voices, a child's and a dog's. The courtroom had slowly returned to a tense quiet as Eric Dalton was escorted out under heavy supervision. The spectators murmured amongst themselves, shocked and still struggling to process the events. The gavel's echo seemed to linger, a reminder that the formal legal process was still ongoing, but in truth, the extraordinary moment of truth had already occurred. Lily remained beside Chase, small hands gripping his vest, clinging to the one being she trusted implicitly. Deputy Mark Hale stayed close, kneeling to speak softly to her but careful not to intrude. "You did amazing, Lily," he whispered. "Now, do you want to tell us everything?" Lily nodded, wide brown eyes glistening with tears that hadn't yet fallen. She took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of Chase's fur, and began speaking in measured, deliberate sentences. "He came into my room at night," she said. Her voice, though small, carried clarity beyond her years. "I was sleeping, and he said I couldn't tell anyone or he would hurt me. He wore a jacket that smelled like smoke and leather, and he smelled funny, like the basement." Every detail seemed precise and rehearsed, yet entirely natural, as though her memory had been stored perfectly, waiting for this exact moment to surface. Deputy Hale listened intently, nodding occasionally. "That's very brave of you, Lily. Keep telling us, we're listening." Lily continued, her confidence growing with each word. She described the car she was placed in, the faint smell of gasoline, the worn leather seats, the peculiar sound the engine made when starting. "It was dark," she said. "I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth. He said no one would believe me." Her small face scrunched with the memory, and Hale instinctively rubbed her shoulder, offering silent reassurance. Chase pressed his head lightly against her arm, his presence a silent shield and comfort. The courtroom, now silent and attentive, seemed to lean in closer, absorbing every detail. Spectators whispered in awe and horror. How could a child remember so much? How had investigators missed these details? Deputy Hale noted that each description matched pieces of the ongoing investigation. The car's make, model, and condition had been observed during searches. The jacket's peculiar smell had been reported by neighbors. Lily was corroborating information that adults had pieced together, yet no one had known she retained such a vivid memory. "She told Chase everything," Hale whispered softly to Judge Reynolds, who was observing from the bench. The judge nodded, understanding the magnitude of the moment. "Yes," she said quietly, "and that dog never lies. Whatever she is saying, it's truth. The alignment is uncanny. We must proceed carefully but decisively." Every officer in the courtroom recognized that the child's testimony, combined with the K-9's reaction, elevated her words from mere statements to critical evidence. Lily's tiny hands trembled slightly as she recounted the hours spent trapped. "He took me to a room I had never seen before. There was a window, but it was covered with a thick curtain. He told me to be quiet or he would hurt my family too. I could hear the TV in another room, and I knew he didn't want anyone to hear me." Her voice wavered with fear, but she continued without stopping, determined to tell everything. Hale realized that this child had survived an ordeal no one else could comprehend, and yet she spoke with unwavering courage. Chase remained at her side, alert and protective. Every now and then his ears would twitch, signaling that he had detected subtle movements or sounds from Dalton's previous associates who might be observing the courtroom. The K-9's instincts were constant. He never wavered. For Lily, Chase's presence allowed her to speak without hesitation. She recounted each detail: the scratches on Dalton's arms, the items he had hidden, the directions he gave her to stay quiet. Every observation was precise, and Deputy Hale understood that this child's narrative could lead to evidence adults might have overlooked. Lily paused for a moment, her voice small. "He said he was going to make sure no one believed me. He said I had to be alone, but I wasn't alone. Chase was there. And now everyone is listening." Hale's chest tightened with emotion. The bravery of a child recounting trauma was staggering, yet the K-9's instincts had validated every word. The courtroom, too, seemed to understand this was not just testimony, it was survival speaking. Every whisper, every subtle body language, and every glance between child and dog reinforced the gravity of what was being revealed. Judge Reynolds adjusted her papers and leaned forward, addressing the courtroom softly. "We will allow the child to continue in a controlled environment with her K-9 and Deputy Hale present. Officers continue to document her statements. Every detail may prove critical." Hale nodded, positioning himself closer to Lily while ensuring her emotional state remained stable. "You're safe, Lily," he said gently. "Just tell us what happened, step by step." Lily nodded, taking another deep breath. "He tried to hide things in the room," she explained. "I saw his jacket, a small bag, and some toys that weren't mine. I remember the smell, it was the same as the car. He said I had to stay quiet, but I was scared, and I knew if I whispered to Chase, he would understand." Hale noted every description, knowing it could be cross-referenced with items found in Dalton's possession. Every word strengthened the case, corroborated by instinct, memory, and physical evidence. The officers moved carefully, documenting as Lily recounted her time in captivity. Each phrase, each detail was precise. He covered the windows. He had a radio on loud so no one could hear. There was a small closet in the corner, and I hid there sometimes. I could see his shoes when he walked. They had scuffs on the side, black and worn. I remember them because they looked like my dad's shoes. The specificity of her memory stunned Hale. Even investigators had overlooked such mundane, yet telling details. Chase remained vigilant throughout, occasionally turning his head toward the doors, sensing every motion in the courtroom. His training complemented Lily's bravery, allowing her to speak freely without fear. Her voice grew steadier as she recounted the events of that terrifying night. She spoke of Dalton's threats, the fear that had silenced her, and the strategies she had used to survive. Every recollection revealed not only what had happened, but also how remarkably resourceful and brave she had been. "Then I remembered the night you found me," Lily whispered, looking directly at Chase. "I had to trust someone even if I didn't know it yet. I knew you wouldn't let him hurt me." Hale swallowed hard. This child at 3 years old was describing not only trauma but the intuitive survival strategies that had kept her alive. Chase's subtle nod and attentive stance validated her every word, creating an unspoken bond that communicated courage, trust, and truth. The courtroom watched in awe as Lily's testimony unfolded. Spectators were captivated. Journalists scribbled notes furiously. Even Dalton's attorney could not deny the precise details being recounted. The alignment of the child's memory, Chase's reactions, and the emerging evidence created a scenario that was undeniable. Hale whispered reassurance continuously, but Lily's bravery required little comfort. She was determined, precise, and unwavering in recounting every detail, no matter how frightening. Finally, Lily paused, taking a deep breath. "I told Chase everything because he listens. He understands fear and he protects me, and now everyone else is listening too. I'm not scared anymore." Her tiny hands pressed against Chase's fur, drawing strength and comfort. Hale felt his chest tighten. The courtroom understood it too. This was more than a testimony. It was a narrative of survival, courage, and the power of instinct and trust. Judge Reynolds, moved beyond words, leaned back slightly. "The child's courage is extraordinary," she said softly. "The combination of her memory and the K-9's instincts has revealed critical information that we will act upon immediately." The gavel remained poised, symbolizing that justice was moving forward, but it also represented acknowledgement that something extraordinary had unfolded in the room. A toddler and a dog had spoken louder than any adult, revealing truth and danger alike. Lily, still clinging to Chase, whispered once more, "He can't hurt me anymore." Hale nodded, kneeling beside her, his voice soft. "You're safe now, Lily. No one will hurt you again." The K-9 nudged her gently, a silent affirmation of protection. Outside the formal proceedings, officers began preparing to investigate the details she had shared. Every description, every memory, was a roadmap to evidence that could finally secure justice. The child had spoken, the dog had corroborated, and the adult world could only respond. In that moment, the courtroom felt different. The air was thick with awe, tension, and the unspoken understanding that something remarkable had happened. A 3-year-old child, armed with memory, trust, and courage, alongside a loyal and trained K-9, had revealed a dangerous adult and set in motion the first steps toward justice. Every observer understood the lesson. Bravery can come in the smallest packages, and sometimes truth is spoken in whispers heard only by those who truly understand. The courtroom had settled into a tense hush as Lily's testimony concluded. Deputy Mark Hale stayed kneeling beside her, ensuring she remained calm while Chase maintained his vigilant stance. The child's words had been precise, harrowing, and corroborated by the K-9's instinctual response. Now, the focus shifted to law enforcement. Detectives had gathered outside, reviewing every detail of Lily's account, ready to act. The evidence she had provided could finally connect the dots that had eluded investigators for weeks. For the first time, the investigation felt alive with momentum. Detective Sergeant Carla Hayes reviewed the preliminary notes. Lily had described Dalton's jacket, the faint smell of smoke and leather, the unique scuffs on his shoes, the layout of the room, and the hiding spots she had used. Each detail could now be cross-referenced with items in Dalton's apartment and the vehicle he had used. "We have enough to search his apartment immediately," she said firmly. Her team nodded, aware that every second counted in collecting uncontaminated evidence. Hale watched Lily gently stroke Chase's fur, still trembling from the emotional intensity. He whispered softly, "You did so well, kiddo. We're going to make sure he can't hurt anyone else." Lily's small nod conveyed understanding, but her eyes were alert, still scanning the room and the figure of Dalton even from a distance. Her trauma had left a mark, but it also sharpened her instincts. Chase sensed it too, pressing close to her side, muscles coiled, ready for action. Outside the courtroom, Detective Hayes coordinated the team. Officers prepared to search Dalton's home, noting the items Lily had described. Dalton had tried to maintain a facade of innocence, but his visible fear in the courtroom now suggested his compliance would be minimal. The team prepared for resistance, but also hoped the detailed account from the child, reinforced by the K-9, would yield irrefutable evidence. Every item mentioned, clothing, a bag, scuffed shoes, could become a critical piece in securing justice. Back in the courtroom, Judge Reynolds addressed the spectators. "We will temporarily recess the hearing while law enforcement conducts a thorough search based on the child's testimony. The safety of all involved, particularly the child, remains our top priority." The room remained quiet, everyone absorbing the enormity of the situation. The court had witnessed the extraordinary, a toddler's memory paired with a K-9's instincts, guiding justice in real time. The spectators' fascination was matched only by the tension. The room seemed to vibrate with anticipation of what the search might uncover. Detective Hayes' team moved with precision. Dalton's apartment was within a 30-minute drive, and the officers ensured that the child remained protected in the courthouse under Hale and Chase's watchful eyes. The search began immediately upon arrival, with evidence technicians documenting everything meticulously. Each corner of Dalton's apartment was scrutinized, matching Lily's recollections. Her description of the small closet in the corner proved crucial. Inside, they found personal items belonging to the child: a blanket, a toy, and even a jacket that matched Dalton's scent she had described. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, spectators whispered among themselves. The reporters recorded notes furiously, trying to capture the unfolding drama without interrupting the legal proceedings. Hale whispered to Lily, "They're finding the things you told us about, Lily. Your memory is helping everyone catch him." The child's small nod was filled with a mixture of relief and continued fear. "Chase," she murmured, "he knows I'm telling the truth." Hale smiled softly. Indeed, Chase's posture remained vigilant, eyes scanning every doorway, alert to any sign of danger or stress. Evidence technicians photographed Dalton's scuffed shoes, noting the patterns and marks. Hayes carefully documented the jacket's peculiar smell, noting it matched Lily's description. Even mundane items, like a small radio that Dalton had left on, were collected and tagged. These seemingly ordinary details now formed a mosaic of evidence corroborated by the child's precise memory. Each item collected reinforced the narrative Lily had provided, turning trauma into tangible proof. As the search continued, Dalton was held in custody at a nearby precinct. His attempts to minimize and deny his actions were futile. Officers had coordinated with digital forensic teams to analyze the radio, cell phones, and any other potential communication devices. Every move was calculated, ensuring that nothing compromised the evidence. Detective Hayes remarked to her team, "Lily's testimony, combined with the K-9's instincts, is guiding this entire operation. Let's make sure we do it right." Hale observed from the courthouse window, watching the officers enter Dalton's apartment. Lily sat quietly beside Chase, resting her head against his side. The German shepherd's ears twitched slightly, alert to every sound. Hale marveled at the bond, a child who had survived trauma, a dog trained to sense danger, and a team of law enforcement officers working in harmony to protect and bring justice. The room felt electric, anticipation building with every passing minute. Soon, Hayes' team discovered a small hidden compartment behind the closet wall. Inside, they found more items, photographs, a small notebook with handwritten threats, and personal effects of Lily that had never been recovered. Each discovery confirmed the accuracy of Lily's memory, and each item strengthened the legal case against Dalton. Hayes photographed and cataloged everything meticulously, aware that these pieces would play a critical role in securing a conviction. Back in the courtroom, Judge Reynolds reconvened the hearing. "Law enforcement has uncovered evidence that corroborates the child's testimony. We will proceed carefully, ensuring her safety at all times." Hale guided Lily forward, allowing her to witness the process from a safe distance. She looked at Chase, tiny hands clutching his vest. "He can't hurt me anymore," she whispered. Hale nodded, maintaining his protective presence while ensuring the proceedings remained formal and safe. Spectators, jurors, and reporters could sense the tension. The courtroom had transformed into a theater of truth. A toddler's memory, a K-9's instinct, and the meticulous uncovering of evidence were converging into a narrative that could not be denied. Dalton's attempts at denial, once composed, now seemed futile. Every officer, every investigator, and every observer recognized the extraordinary alignment of events that had led to this moment. Lily's testimony continued, though now more focused on clarifying details for the investigators. She pointed out Dalton's patterns, behaviors, and hiding spots, allowing law enforcement to understand not just the events but also the strategies Dalton had used to silence her. Chase remained at her side, muscles taut but controlled, ears forward, every movement signaling readiness to protect. Hale marveled at the child's courage. At 3 years old, she had managed to communicate trauma, memory, and survival strategies in a way that adults rarely could. Detective Hayes summarized her findings for Judge Reynolds. "Your Honor, the evidence collected aligns precisely with the child's testimony. Items described, jacket, shoes, blanket, and other personal belongings, have been recovered and documented. This corroboration, combined with the K-9's behavior, establishes probable cause for formal charges." The judge nodded solemnly, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances. The courtroom had witnessed not just testimony, but the unfolding of justice in real time, guided by the courage of a small child and the instincts of a loyal dog. As Dalton was brought back to the courthouse for formal charges, Hale ensured Lily remained calm. She pressed her hand against Chase's side, whispering softly, "It's okay, Chase. They found everything I told them about. He can't hide anymore." Chase nudged her gently, muscles relaxing slightly but eyes still vigilant. Hale knew this was a turning point. The child's bravery and the dog's instincts had led law enforcement to tangible, undeniable evidence. The legal process was now fully equipped to pursue justice. Judge Reynolds addressed the courtroom one final time for the day. "Today, we have witnessed extraordinary bravery and trust. The child's detailed account, corroborated by physical evidence and the K-9's instincts, has provided a clear path toward justice. Proceedings will continue with full consideration of all recovered evidence, and the child's safety remains our top priority." The gavel fell lightly, echoing through the room. Every observer understood that they had witnessed a moment that would resonate for years. Courage, instinct, and truth converging in a single, unforgettable day. The courthouse buzzed with a tense energy as Dalton was escorted back in, handcuffed and guarded by deputies. His eyes darted around the room, resting briefly on Lily, who sat clutching Chase's vest, her small body coiled with both fear and quiet courage. Every spectator, reporter, and officer seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. This was more than a hearing. It was a confrontation of truth, courage, and instinct, played out before an audience that had never witnessed anything like it. Judge Reynolds, seated firmly behind her bench, called the court to order. "The defendant will be formally addressed regarding the evidence uncovered and the testimony provided. All parties are to remain seated and maintain decorum." Her voice carried authority, but beneath it was a palpable respect for the extraordinary circumstances unfolding. The alignment of a toddler's precise memory, the K-9's instincts, and physical evidence made this a unique case. Every word spoken now would resonate far beyond the room. Deputy Hale remained close to Lily, kneeling beside her. "You're safe," he whispered softly. "Just keep telling the truth and Chase is right here with you." Lily's small fingers tightened on the K-9's vest. Her gaze was fixed on Dalton, who now tried weakly to regain a composure that was visibly slipping. The child's bravery had set the tone. The adults now responded, consciously or unconsciously, to the courage of someone 3 years old. Dalton's lawyer attempted to intervene, seeking to mitigate the damage. "Your Honor, the child's recollection is—" He was interrupted by the judge's firm hand. "We are here to document the child's testimony and address the defendant's accountability based on evidence. Any attempts to undermine this proceeding will be noted." Dalton shifted uneasily, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Every movement betrayed anxiety, and Chase, attentive as ever, stiffened subtly, muscles taut, eyes never leaving Dalton. Lily began recounting more details, her voice stronger than before. "He said no one would believe me. He said I had to be quiet. I remember the jacket, the smell, the car, the blanket, the closet, everything." Her words were deliberate, and each one carried weight beyond her years. Deputy Hale noted how precise and coherent her narrative was. He whispered encouragement, ensuring she remained calm, while Chase's protective presence allowed her to focus entirely on recounting the events. The spectators leaned forward, captivated. The journalists scribbled rapidly, unable to hide their astonishment. Dalton, meanwhile, seemed to shrink under the collective scrutiny. His denials became fragmented, inconsistent, and increasingly desperate. I don't remember that," he stammered, voice cracking, as the officers in the room exchanged subtle glances. Even without explicit proof in front of them, the alignment of evidence, memory, and instinct painted a damning portrait. Chase moved slightly, a low growl vibrating through the courtroom floor. Every adult understood the warning. It was subtle, controlled, and deliberate. The K-9 had been trained for moments like this: threat identification, protective instincts, and signaling without aggression unless necessary. But in the presence of a child who had endured trauma, his warning was unmistakable. Dalton flinched visibly, realizing he could not escape the K-9's unyielding vigilance. Judge Reynolds addressed Dalton directly. "You have been presented with testimony, evidence, and corroboration that demands accountability. The child's recollection has been confirmed through recovered items, observation, and the K-9's instincts. You are now afforded the opportunity to respond truthfully. Any further deception will be considered in the proceedings. Dalton swallowed hard. His facade of control had crumbled. He could see that the courtroom had turned against him, and his attempts at denial were futile. Lily, encouraged by Hale's gentle nod, continued. I remember the hiding places. I remember the bag he tried to hide. I saw the shoes he wore. I saw the jacket he left on the floor. I remember everything because I had to survive. I trusted Chase to help me. Each word drew audible gasps from the audience. Witnessing a child recount trauma with such detail and clarity was already extraordinary. Combined with the K-9's reaction, it was unprecedented. Dalton's attempts to minimize his actions were irrelevant. Every adult present could see the truth, unspoken yet undeniable. Deputy Hale spoke softly, guiding Lily to continue without fear. Tell us about the radio, Lily. What did you remember? She lifted her small hand, trembling slightly, and spoke clearly. He kept it on loud so no one could hear me. It was a trick. I hid in the closet sometimes, but he watched. He didn't know I was thinking of Chase. Her words drew murmurs from the courtroom. Observers began to piece together the psychological manipulation she had endured. It wasn't just physical captivity. It was mental control, carefully orchestrated. And now, in a courtroom filled with adults, she was reclaiming power over her story. Chase's posture remained unwavering. Every muscle, every eye movement communicated alertness. He was ready to protect Lily if Dalton attempted anything, and his instincts were backed by years of training. Yet the K-9 also communicated calm, reassuring Lily that she was safe. Her trust in him allowed her to narrate the events with precision, strength, and courage. This partnership was extraordinary, a living testament to survival, trust, and instinct. Dalton's panic escalated. His attorney whispered frantically, urging him to maintain composure, but the dam had broken. Every small detail Lily had mentioned matched the evidence found in his apartment. The scuffed shoes, the jacket, the bag, the blanket, and the hidden notebook containing threats. His attempts at denial were crumbling before the eyes of law enforcement, the judge, and the public. Each lie was exposed by the alignment of memory, instinct, and proof. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, voice firm but calm. The court acknowledges the bravery of the child and the integrity of law enforcement. The K-9's behavior has confirmed the validity of the testimony. The defendant will remain in custody, and proceedings will continue with full consideration of all evidence. Dalton's shoulders slumped. The courtroom's tension shifted from anticipation to a quiet, inevitable realization. The truth had been fully revealed, and he could no longer escape accountability. Spectators, journalists, and officers watched as Dalton was formally charged. Each step he took was heavy with resignation. Hale knelt beside Lily, speaking softly. You've done something incredible, Lily. You were brave, you remembered everything, and you helped everyone find the truth. Lily nodded, eyes bright with relief and still tinged with the rawness of fear. Chase helped me, she whispered. I couldn't have done it without him. Hale smiled, recognizing that the bond between child and K-9 had been the linchpin in revealing the truth. Chase moved slightly, pressing his head against her arm, protective yet calm. The German shepherd had fulfilled his role with extraordinary precision. He had identified danger, safeguarded a child, and communicated instinctively to ensure the legal process could proceed safely. The courtroom had witnessed not just testimony but a dynamic collaboration of courage, instinct, and justice in motion. Judge Reynolds addressed the courtroom one final time for the day. The bravery exhibited by the child and the professionalism of law enforcement have ensured that critical evidence is preserved and accounted for. Proceedings will continue with full consideration of the testimony and recovered items. The child's safety and well-being remain paramount. Her gavel fell lightly, echoing through the courtroom, a formal acknowledgement of the extraordinary events that had unfolded. The spectators exhaled collectively. Reporters scrambled to record every moment, understanding the historic nature of the case. A toddler, A K-9 and a small but powerful memory had exposed a dangerous criminal. Dalton, now restrained and visibly defeated, had no recourse. The courtroom had become a theater of truth, where courage and instinct had prevailed over deception and fear. Lily leaned against Chase, whispering softly, "It's over. He can't hurt me anymore." Hale nodded, maintaining his protective stance while feeling the relief wash over the room. Chase nudged her gently, a silent affirmation. Outside the formal proceedings, detectives began reviewing the collected evidence, readying themselves for the next phase, building the case for conviction. But inside the courtroom, everyone understood that the extraordinary alignment of bravery, memory, and instinct had ensured justice was now possible. The day ended with a sense of awe. The courtroom had witnessed the power of trust between a child and a K-9, the courage of a toddler recounting trauma, and the unraveling of a dangerous man's lies. Every officer, juror, and spectator left with a profound understanding. Truth, when combined with instinct and bravery, can never be hidden. The courthouse felt unusually still the following morning, as if the events of the previous day had left an indelible mark on everyone inside. Lily sat beside Chase, who rested his massive head gently on her small lap, alert but calm. Deputy Hale kept a watchful eye over the proceedings, knowing this day would be pivotal, not just for the case but for Lily's journey toward recovery. The courtroom's air was thick with anticipation. Today would decide the final outcome, the culmination of weeks of trauma, courage, and relentless pursuit of truth. Eric Dalton sat in the defendant's chair, looking smaller than ever. His previous bravado had eroded completely. The collected evidence, corroborated by Lily's precise testimony and Chase's extraordinary instincts, left him with no room for denial. Every detail he had hoped to obscure had been exposed. The scuffed shoes, the jacket, the hidden bag, the blanket, and the handwritten threats in his notebook. The room seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the judge's instructions to proceed. Judge Reynolds cleared her throat, her gavel raised lightly. "The court has reviewed the evidence, including the child's testimony, the K-9's behavioral observations, and the items recovered from the defendant's residence. Based on this overwhelming corroboration, formal charges of child endangerment, abduction, and related offenses will proceed." Dalton's face paled. He shifted nervously in his seat, aware that the walls of justice were closing in with finality. Deputy Hale knelt beside Lily, whispering softly, "It's going to be okay, Lily. Today everyone will see the truth and no one can hurt you again." Lily's small fingers tightened around Chase's fur. "Chase helped me tell everyone," she whispered. Hale smiled, recognizing that the bond between child and K-9 had been the linchpin in exposing Dalton's crimes. The courtroom itself seemed to acknowledge it, a silent reverence for the courage, memory, and instinct that had brought the truth to light. The prosecution began presenting the evidence systematically. Every item Lily had described was documented and photographed. The scuffed shoes, the jacket, the bag, and the personal belongings found hidden in the closet. Investigators explained how each item linked directly to her testimony. The narrative was compelling, precise, and undeniable. The courtroom watched, captivated, as the seemingly impossible alignment of memory, instinct, and physical evidence formed an unbreakable chain pointing directly to Dalton's guilt. Lily's voice, small yet unwavering, provided the final corroboration. She described the night she was taken, the tricks Dalton had used to silence her, and the hiding spots she had relied on to survive. Every word she spoke, every pause she took, resonated with the authority of someone who had endured and survived. Chase remained close, alert to every movement, protecting her in ways that no words could describe. The courtroom witnessed an extraordinary partnership, child and K-9, delivering justice in its purest form. The defense attorney attempted to challenge the narrative, citing potential inconsistencies. "Your Honor, we question the reliability of the child's memory at such a young age. There may be embellishments," Judge Reynolds, firm and unwavering, interjected. "The child's testimony has been corroborated by physical evidence and a trained K-9's instincts. Any perceived inconsistencies are irrelevant in light of overwhelming alignment and corroboration. The court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances and extraordinary bravery displayed. Dalton's lawyer fell silent, realizing argument was futile. Spectators leaned forward, absorbed by the courtroom drama. The journalists scribbled furiously, trying to capture the extraordinary narrative for the public record. Dalton's panic was now complete. His attempts at denial, manipulation, and composure were meaningless against the combination of Lily's recollection, the K-9's protective behavior, and the meticulous evidence gathered. The entire courtroom seemed to collectively understand. Truth had prevailed, guided by courage and instinct, leaving the defendant exposed in every possible way. Judge Reynolds allowed the child to approach the witness stand again, though Hale remained beside her. Lily pointed to Dalton, small fingers trembling slightly but steady. "He did everything I said," she whispered, "and now everyone knows." The courtroom exhaled collectively. The power of her words, combined with the presence of Chase, was overwhelming. It was a moment that transcended ordinary legal proceedings, a triumph of courage and truth against fear and deception. The officers returned to recount the items recovered during the search. Every description Lily had provided matched exactly. The hidden bag, the personal effects, the jacket, the shoes, even the notes Dalton had tried to hide. Detectives explained the significance of each item, the potential harm they represented, and how they corroborated the child's recollection. Every connection was clear and irrefutable. Dalton sat silently, defeated and exposed, as the weight of evidence pressed upon him. The courtroom was silent when Judge Reynolds finally spoke. "This court acknowledges the extraordinary courage of a 3-year-old child and the invaluable assistance of a trained K-9 officer. The testimony and evidence presented today will guide the final proceedings and sentencing. The defendant's actions will be held fully accountable under the law." Her words carried weight, authority, and respect for the remarkable events that had led to this moment. The gavel struck lightly, signaling that formal acknowledgement of justice had begun. Lily pressed against Chase, whispering softly, "We did it, Chase. He can't hurt anyone else." Hale nodded, voice gentle. "You did it, Lily. You remembered everything. You stayed brave, and Chase helped protect you. No one can touch you now." Chase nudged her gently, muscles relaxing slightly, but eyes still scanning for potential threats. The courtroom, officers, and spectators all recognized the extraordinary nature of this bond. A child who survived, and a dog whose instincts had safeguarded that survival. Outside the formal proceedings, law enforcement prepared Dalton's case for trial. Every recovered item, every statement, every instinctive reaction of Chase would be documented and submitted. Investigators marveled at the precision of Lily's memory, even at her young age, and how it had guided them to evidence that might otherwise have remained undiscovered. They understood that this case would be remembered as a unique convergence of courage, memory, and instinct. In the days that followed, Dalton was formally tried and convicted. The jury, aware of the overwhelming evidence and corroborating testimony, delivered a verdict that reflected justice served. Sentencing ensured that he could no longer threaten children or manipulate the vulnerable. Meanwhile, Lily began her long journey toward healing, supported by her family, Deputy Hale, and of course Chase. The courtroom had witnessed not only the uncovering of truth, but the reclamation of power by a child who had survived unimaginable trauma. The story of Lily and Chase became emblematic of courage, resilience, and the extraordinary potential of trust between humans and K-9 officers. Across the country, news outlets covered the story, highlighting the unique partnership that had led to justice. People marveled at the bravery of a 3-year-old, the precision of her memory, and the instinctual loyalty of a trained police dog. The narrative inspired communities and reinforced the importance of vigilance, protection, and the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals. In the quiet moments, Hale watched Lily play gently with Chase outside the courthouse. The child's laughter, small but genuine, filled the air. Chase lay beside her, ever vigilant yet serene in the knowledge that his charge was now safe. Hale reflected on the events that had unfolded, the tension, the terror, the courage, and the final triumph. The courtroom had witnessed an extraordinary display of bravery and justice. But outside, in the simplicity of a child's recovery and a dog's protective presence, the real triumph was clear: survival, trust, and healing. Judge Reynolds, upon hearing the final sentencing, remarked quietly to Deputy Hale, "This case will be remembered not only for the courage of the child, but also for the extraordinary instinct of the K-9 and the meticulous work of law enforcement. Justice has been served, but so has something deeper, a reminder of human and animal resilience." Hale nodded, looking at Lily and Chase playing nearby. The child had faced fear, trauma, and deception, yet she had emerged with bravery and trust intact. The K-9 had been more than a tool. He had been a guardian, a witness, and a partner. The courtroom drama concluded, but the lessons endured. Courage could be found in the smallest of individuals. Instinct could be as telling as testimony. And justice, when guided by memory, vigilance, and truth, could not be denied. For Lily, the world was no longer a place of fear. With Chase at her side and the law on her side, she could reclaim her childhood piece by piece, step by step, day by day. As the sun set on the courthouse steps, Hale watched Lily and Chase walk hand in paw. A small girl in her K-9 had faced darkness and emerged victorious. The story, while harrowing, had a clear ending: justice delivered, a child protected, and a bond that had changed lives forever. The echoes of courage, instinct, and truth would remain, not just in the courthouse, but in every heart that had witnessed this extraordinary tale.